one direction, Annabeth in another, but I was too dazed to move. Then I heard a strange rapping sound above me. My eyes rose to Auntie M's hands, which had turned into gnarled and warty, with sharp bronze talons for fingernails. I almost looked higher, but somewhere off to my left, Annabeth screamed, "No! Don't!" More rasping, the sound of tiny snakes right above me, from where about Auntie M's head would be. "Run!" Grover bleated. I heard him racing across the gravel, yelling, "Maya!" to kickstart his flying sneakers. I couldn't move. I stared at Auntie M's gnarled hands and tried to fight the groggy trance the old woman had put me in. "Such a pity to destroy a handsome young face," she told me soothingly. "Stay with me, Percy. All you have to do is look up." I fought the urge to obey. Instead, I looked to one side and saw one of the glass spheres people put in gardens. A gazing ball. I could see Auntie M's dark reflection in the orange glass. Her headdress was gone, revealing her face as a shimmering pale circle. Her hair was moving, writhing like serpents. Auntie M. Auntie M? How could I have been so stupid? Think, I told myself. How did Medusa die in the myths? But I couldn't think. Something told me that in the myth, Medusa had been asleep when she was attacked by my namesake, Perseus. She wasn't anywhere near asleep right now. If she wanted, she could take those talons right now and rake open my face. "The gray-eyed one did this to me, Percy," Medusa said. She didn't sound anything like a monster. Her voice invited me to look up, to sympathize with a poor old grandmother. "Annabeth's mother, the cursed Athena, turned me from a beautiful woman into this." "Don't listen to her," Annabeth's voice shouted somewhere in the statuary. "Run, Percy!" "Silence!" Medusa snarled. Then her voice modulated back to a comforting purr. "You see why I must destroy the girl, Percy. She is my enemy's daughter. I shall crush her statue to dust. But you, dear Percy, you need not suffer." "No," I muttered. I tried to make my legs move. "Do you really want to help the gods?" Medusa asked. "Do you understand what awaits you on this foolish quest, Percy? What will happen if you reach the underworld? Do not be a pawn for the Olympians, my dear. You would be better off as a statue. Less pain. "Percy!" Behind me I heard a buzzing noise, like a 200-pound hummingbird in a nosedive. Grover yelled, "Duck!" I turned, and there he was in the night sky, flying from 12 o'clock with his winged toes fluttering. Grover holding a tree branch the size of a baseball bat. His eyes were shut tight. His head twitched from side to side. He was navigating by ears and nose alone. "Duck!" he yelled again. "I'll get her!" That finally jolted me into action. Knowing Grover, I was sure he'd miss Medusa and nail me. I dove to one side. Thwack! At first, I thought it was the sound of Grover hitting a tree, and then Medusa roared with rage. "You miserable satyr!" she snarled. "I'll add you to my collection!" "That was for Uncle Ferdinand!" Grover yelled back. I scrambled away and hid in the statuary while Grover swooped down for another pass. Crack! "Ah!" Medusa yelled, her snake hair hissing and spitting. Right next to me, Annabeth's voice said, "Percy!" I jumped so high my feet nearly cleared a garden gnome. "Geez, don't do that!" Annabeth took off her Yankees cap and became visible. "You have to cut her head off." "What? Are you crazy? Let's just get out of here." "Medusa is a menace. She's evil. I'd kill her myself, but..." Annabeth swallowed as if she were about to make a difficult admission. "But you've got the better weapon. Besides, I'd never get close to her. She sliced me to bits because of my mother. You've got a chance." "What? I can't..." "Look, do you want her turning more innocent people into statues?" She pointed to a pair of statue lovers, a man and a woman with their arms around each other, turned to stone by the monster. Annabeth grabbed a green gazing ball from a nearby pedestal. A polished shield would be better, she studied the sphere critically. The convexity will cause some distortion, and the reflection size should be off by a factor of... "Would you speak English?" "I am." She tossed me the glass ball. "Just look at her in the glass. Never look at her directly." "Hey guys!" Grover yelled somewhere above us. "I think she's unconscious." "Rah! Maybe not," Grover corrected. He went in for another pass with the tree branch. Hurry, Annabeth told me. Grover's got a great nose, but eventually he'll crash. I took out my pen and uncapped it. The bronze blade of Riptide elongated in my hand. I followed the hissing and spitting sounds of Medusa's hair. I kept my eyes locked on the gazing ball, so I would only glimpse Medusa's reflection, not the real thing. Then, in the green-tinted glass, I saw her. Grover was coming in for another turn at the bat, but this time he flew a little too low. Medusa grabbed the stick and pulled him off course. He tumbled through the air and crashed into the arms of a stone grizzly bear with a painful whoomp. Medusa was about to lunge at him when I yelled, "Hey!" I advanced on her, which wasn't easy holding a sword and a glass ball. If she charged, I'd have a hard time defending myself. But she let me approach. 20 feet. 10 feet. I could see the reflection of her face now. Surely it wasn't really that ugly. The green swirls of the gazing ball must be distorting it, making it look worse. "You wouldn't harm an old woman, Percy," she crooned. "I know you wouldn't." I hesitated, fascinated by the face I saw reflected in the glass. The eyes that seemed to burn straight through the green tint, making my arms go weak. From the cement grizzly, Grover moaned, "Percy, don't listen to her." Medusa cackled. "Too late." She lunged at me with her talons. I slashed up with my sword and heard a thickening shluck. Then a hiss like wind rushing out of the cavern, the sound of a monster disintegrating. Something fell to the ground next to my foot. It took all my willpower not to look. I could feel warm ooze soaking into my sock. A little dying snake head tugging at my shoelaces. "Oh, yuck," Grover said. His eyes were still tightly closed, but I could guess he could still hear the thing gurgling and steaming. "Mega yuck." Annabeth came up next to me, her eyes fixed on the sky. She was holding Medusa's black veil and said, "Don't move." Very, very carefully, without looking down, she knelt and wrapped the monster's head in the black cloth. Then picking it up, it was still dripping green juice. "Are you okay?" she asked me, her voice trembling. "Yeah," I decided, though I felt like throwing up my double cheeseburger. Why didn't the head evaporate? "Once you sever it, it becomes a spoil of war," she said. "Same as your minotaur horn. But don't unwrap the head. It can still petrify you." Grover moaned as he climbed down from the grizzly statue. He had a big welt on his forehead. His green rasta cap hung from one of his little goat horns. His fake feet had been knocked off of his hooves. The magic sneakers were flying aimlessly around his head. "The Red Baron," I said. "Good job, man." He managed a bashful grin. That really was not fun. Well, the hitting or the stick part, that was fun, but crashing into the concrete bear? Not fun. He snatched his shoes out of the air. I recapped my sword, and together the three of us stumbled back into the warehouse. We found some old plastic grocery bags behind the snack counter and double-wrapped Medusa's head. We plopped it on the table where we'd eaten dinner and sat around it, too exhausted to speak. Finally, I said, "So, we have Athena to thank for this monster?" Annabeth flashed me an irritated look. "Your dad, actually. Don't you remember? Medusa was Percy's girlfriend. They decided to meet in my mother's temple, and that's why Athena turned her into a monster. Medusa and her two sisters, who had helped her get into the temple, they became the three Gorgons. That's why Medusa wanted to slice me up. But she wanted to preserve you as a nice statue. She's still sweet on your dad. You probably remind her of him." My face was burning. "Oh, so now it's my fault we met Medusa?" Annabeth straightened. In a bad imitation of my voice, she said, "It's just a photo, Annabeth. What's the harm?" "Forget it," I said. "You're impossible. You're insufferable. Hey," Grover interrupted. "You two are giving me a migraine, and satyrs don't even get migraines. What are we going to do with his head?" I stared at the thing. One little snake was hanging out of a hole in the plastic. The words printed on the side of the bag said, "We appreciate your business." I was angry, not just with Annabeth or with her mom, but with all the gods for this whole quest, for letting us get blown off the road in two major fistfights on our very first day out of camp. At this rate, we'd never make it to LA alive, much less before the summer solstice. What had Medusa said? "Do not be a pawn of the Olympians, my dear. You'd be better off as a statue." I got up. "I'll be back." "Percy," Annabeth called after me. "What are you—" I searched the back of the warehouse until I found Medusa's office. Her account book showed her 6 most recent sales, all shipped to the underworld to decorate Hades and Persephone's garden. According to one freight bill, the Underworld's billing address was DOA Recording Studios, West Hollywood, California. I folded up the bill and stuffed it in my pocket. In the cash register, I found $20, a few golden drachmas, and some packing slips for the Hermes Overnight Express, which was a little leather bag attached each of them with a little leather bag attached for coins. I rummaged around the rest of the office until I found the right size box. I went back to the picnic table, picked up Medusa's head, and filled out a delivery slip. The Gods, Mount Olympus, 600th floor, Empire State Building, New York, New York. With best wishes, Percy Jackson. They're not going to like that, Grover warned. They'll think you're impertinent. I poured some golden drachmas in the pouch. As soon as I closed it, there was a sound like a cash register, and the package floated off the table and disappeared with a pop. I am impertinent, I said. I looked at Annabeth, daring her to criticize. She didn't. She seemed resigned to the fact that I had a major talent for taking off the gods. Come on, she muttered. We need a new plan. And that's the end of chapter 11. On to chapter 12. We get advice from a poodle. We were pretty miserable that night. We camped out in the woods, hundreds of yards from the main road, in a marshy clearing that local kids had obviously been using for parties. The ground was littered with flattened soda cans and fast food wrappers. We'd taken some food and blankets from Auntie M's, but we didn't dare light a fire to dry our damp clothes. The Furies and Medusa had provided enough excitement for one day. We didn't want to attract anything else. We decided to sleep in shifts. I volunteered to take the first watch. Annabeth curled up in the blankets and was snoring as soon as her head hit the ground. Grover fluttered with his flying shoes to the lowest bough of a tree. He put his back against the trunk and stared up at the night sky. Go ahead and sleep, I told him. I'll wake you if there's trouble. He nodded, but he still didn't close his eyes. It makes me sad, Percy. What does? The fact you signed up for a stupid quest? No, this makes me sad. He pointed at all the garbage on the ground. And the sky. You can't even see the stars. They've polluted the sky. This is a terrible time to be a satyr. Oh, yeah, I guess you'd be an environmentalist? He glared at me. Only a human wouldn't be. Your species is clogging up the world so fast. Never mind. It's useless to lecture a human. At the rate things are going, I'll never find Pan. Pan? Like the cooking spray? Pan! He cried indignantly. P-A-N. The great god Pan. What do you think I want a searcher's license for? A strange breeze rustled through the clearing, temporarily overpowering the stink of trash and muck. It brought the smell of berries and wildflowers and clean rainwater, things that might have once been in these woods. Suddenly, I was nostalgic for something I had never known. Tell me about the search, I said. Grover looked at me cautiously, as if he were afraid I was just making fun of him. The god of the wild places disappeared 2,000 years ago, he told me. A sailor off the coast of Hephaestus heard a mysterious voice crying out from the shore. Tell them the great god Pan has died. When humans heard the news, they believed it. They've been pillaging Pan's kingdom ever since. But for the satyrs, Pan was our lord and master. He protected us and the wild places of the earth. We refused to believe that he died. In every generation, the bravest satyrs pledged their lives to finding Pan. They searched the earth, exploring all the wild places, hoping to find where he is hidden and wake him from his sleep. And you want to be a searcher? I asked him. It's my life's dream, he said. My father was a searcher, and my Uncle Ferdinand, that statue you saw back there. Oh, right. Sorry. Grover shook his head. Uncle Ferdinand knew the risk, and so did my dad. But I'll succeed. I'll be the first searcher to return alive. Hang on. The first? Grover took his reed pipes out of his pocket. No searcher has ever come back. Once that they set out, they disappear, and they're never seen alive again. Not once. In 2,000 years? No. And your dad, you have no idea what happened to him? None. But you still want to go, I said, amazed. I mean, you really think you'll be the one to find Pan? I have to believe that, Percy. Every searcher does. It's the only thing that keeps us from despair when we look at what humans have done to the world. I have to believe that Pan can still be awakened. I stared at the orange haze of the sky, and I tried to understand how Grover could pursue a dream that seemed so hopeless. Then again, was I any better? How are we going to get into the underworld? I asked him. I mean, what chance do we have against a god? I don't know, he admitted. But back at Medusa's, when you were searching her office, Annabeth